There is a hidden ladder running through every room you have ever stood in, and almost no one teaches you how to read it. It is the ladder of influence, and where you sit on it decides who listens to you, who ignores you, and who quietly makes decisions for you instead. Most people spend their whole lives assuming influence comes from personality, from being liked, from being loud in the right rooms. It does not. Influence moves through 6 distinct levels, and by the end of this, you will know exactly which one you are standing on. Level 1 is the invisible level, and it is where almost everyone begins. At this level you can walk into a room and leave it, and no one will remember you were there. Your opinions are heard the way background noise is heard, present, but never processed. You raise a point in a meeting, and 30 seconds later someone else says the same thing, and suddenly it matters. This is not because your idea was weak. It is because you were invisible when you said it. At the invisible level, your value is measured only by your output, never by your presence. If you disappeared tomorrow, the room would adjust within a week and barely notice. This is the level where most careers quietly stall for years without anyone, including the person living it, understanding why. Because invisibility does not feel like failure. It feels like normal life. You show up, you do the work, you go home, and nothing about your position ever seems to shift. The trap of this level is comfort disguised as humility. People tell themselves they are simply modest, simply focused on the work, simply not the type to seek attention. But underneath that story is a quieter truth. They have never been taught that being good at something and being seen for it are 2 completely different skills. The invisible person believes that competence alone will eventually be noticed. It rarely is. Rooms do not reward the best answer. They reward the answer they remember. And you cannot be remembered if you were never truly present in the first place. So the first shift required to leave this level has nothing to do with skill. It requires learning to take up space deliberately, even when it feels unnatural. To speak first sometimes instead of waiting to be asked. To let your name be attached to your own ideas before someone else's is. This feels arrogant to people who have spent their whole lives being told that modesty is a virtue. But invisibility is not modesty. It is simply the absence of a signal. Until you send one, the room has no reason to know you exist. Some people stay at this level their entire lives, mistaking quiet competence for a strategy when it was never a strategy at all. It was just silence. The moment you decide silence is costing you more than visibility would, you begin to climb toward level 2. Level 2 is the light level, and it feels at first like a rival. People know your name now. They smile when you walk in. You get invited to things. This is intoxicating after years of invisibility, and that is exactly the danger. Because being liked and being influential are not the same thing, even though they feel identical from the inside. At this level, people enjoy your company, but they do not yet act on your word. You can make a room laugh. You cannot yet make a room change its mind. This is where many people plateau, because being liked provides just enough social reward to stop the climb entirely. Why keep pushing when you already feel welcomed everywhere you go? But likability without leverage is a currency that spends fast and refills slowly. You are popular in the way that costs you nothing and gains you very little when it actually matters. When a hard decision needs to be made, the liked person is rarely the one consulted. They are invited to the party. They are not invited to the meeting where the real decision happens. This is the trap of level 2, mistaking social warmth for actual standing. People at this level often avoid disagreement entirely, because disagreement risks the one thing they have built, being liked. So they soften every opinion. They agree in rooms where they privately disagree. And slowly their agreement becomes worthless, because it was never tested against anything. If you agree with everyone, your agreement communicates nothing. The people who eventually rise past this level learn a harder skill: how to disagree without losing the room. Not aggression, precision. A willingness to say the uncomfortable thing calmly and let the relationship survive it. This is terrifying to someone who has built their entire identity on being universally liked. Because the first time you say no to someone who expects a yes, you risk finding out that the warmth was conditional all along. Some of it will be. That is the cost of finding out which relationships were real. But the ones that survive disagreement are the only ones that were ever going to carry you further. Level 2 teaches you that approval is not the same as respect, and only one of those two actually moves you forward. The moment you choose respect over approval even once, you begin to leave this level behind. Level 3 is the useful level, and this is where influence starts to feel real for the first time. People no longer just enjoy you, they need you. You have become the person who solves a specific kind of problem, reliably, under pressure. Your phone starts ringing when something breaks. Your name gets attached to solutions instead of small talk. This feels like power, and in a narrow sense it is. But it is a fragile kind of power, because it is entirely tied to function. You are valued for what you do, not for who you are or how you think. This means your influence has a ceiling built directly into it. The moment the specific problem you solve stops existing, or someone cheaper solves it just as well, your leverage disappears with it. Many highly competent people get trapped here for their entire careers, mistaking being useful for being powerful. They keep sharpening the same narrow skill, becoming faster, more efficient, more indispensable within a box that someone else built. But a box, no matter how well you fill it, is still a box. The trap of level 3 is specialization without expansion. You become so good at one function that the room stops seeing you as anything else. You are the person who fixes this. You are the person who handles that. And the moment you try to speak on anything outside that narrow lane, you are quietly redirected back into it. This is not malice. It is simply how rooms categorize people once a category has been assigned. Escaping this level requires a deliberate, uncomfortable move, contributing value outside the box you were placed in. Offering a perspective on strategy when you were hired for execution. Asking to be included in decisions that technically are not your job yet. This is often met with resistance, because rooms are comfortable with the categories they have already built. But the people who eventually gain real influence are the ones who refuse to stay contained inside their usefulness. They let their competence open a door, and then they walk through it into rooms they were not originally invited to. The useful person waits to be given more responsibility. The person who breaks through this level simply starts taking it, carefully, and proves they can carry it. This is uncomfortable, occasionally resented, and absolutely necessary. Level 3 ends the moment people start asking your opinion on things that have nothing to do with your job title. Level 4 is the trusted level, and here something fundamental changes. People no longer just use your skills, they factor in your judgment. You are consulted before decisions are made, not informed after they are finalized. This is the first level where influence starts to feel less like performance and more like standing. You do not have to prove yourself in every single room anymore. Your reputation walks in ahead of you. But trust is also the most fragile form of currency in this entire ladder, because it is built slowly and destroyed instantly. One breach, one leaked confidence, one moment of self-interest at someone else's expense, and years of trust can collapse in a single conversation. This is why people at this level become far more careful with information than they were at any level below it. They understand that access is a form of power, and power that is mishandled even once rarely gets a second chance. The trap here is subtle. Comfort in being trusted can quietly turn into carelessness about staying trustworthy. People start assuming their reputation is permanent, a thing they earned once and now simply own. It is not owned. It is renewed constantly through every decision that follows. The trusted person who forgets this eventually makes the mistake that unwinds everything, often without even realizing the cost until much later. Another trap at this level is a quieter kind of fear, the fear of risking trust by telling someone something they do not want to hear. So people soften warnings, they delay bad news, they protect relationships instead of protecting the truth. But the highest form of trust is not being liked in every conversation. It is being the person someone can rely on to tell them the truth even when it costs something. This is the level where influence starts to require real courage, not just competence. Because now you have something to lose, and losing it changes how carefully you have to move. The people who rise past this level learn to hold trust and honesty at the same time, without letting either one erode the other. They become known not just as reliable, but as safe to be honest with, and safe to receive honesty from. That combination is rare, and rarity is exactly what pushes someone toward the next level. Level 4 ends when people stop asking whether they can trust you, and start assuming it as a baseline fact about who you are. Level 5 is the necessary level, and very few people ever reach it. At this level, decisions do not simply include you, they stall without you. A meeting gets rescheduled because you are not available. A plan quietly pauses until your input arrives. This is not about title or position. It is about the fact that the room has learned it functions worse in your absence. This is real power, and it comes with a much heavier psychological weight than any level before it. Because now, when something goes wrong, there is no one left above you to hide behind. At the lower levels, mistakes get absorbed by the system around you. At this level, you are the system, or a critical part of it, and your mistakes ripple outward with almost no buffer. This is where many capable people quietly begin to fear their own influence. They notice that people no longer challenge their ideas as freely as they once did. Rooms grow careful around them. Disagreement grows rare, not because it disappeared, but because it went underground. This is one of the strangest traps of the necessary level, isolation disguised as respect. People stop telling you hard truths, not because you stop deserving them, but because your position now makes honesty feel risky to the people offering it. If you are not careful, you begin excellence for agreement and comfort for consensus. The people who navigate this level well go out of their way to protect dissent, deliberately inviting the disagreement that others are now too cautious to offer freely. They build small circles of people who are still willing to tell them they are wrong. Because losing access to honest disagreement is one of the fastest ways to lose the judgment that got you here in the first place. Another danger at this level is confusing necessity with permanence. Being necessary today does not guarantee being necessary in 5 years, especially if you stop growing the very judgment that made you valuable. The room's dependence on you is not a lifetime guarantee. It is a current renewable state that requires continued proof. This level demands more self-awareness than any before it, because the external signals that used to tell you the truth about your standing start to quiet down. Fewer people will correct you. Fewer people will challenge you. The room simply adjusts around whatever you decide. That is exactly why this level is often described less as comfort and more as pressure at a higher altitude. The final shift, the one that carries someone past this level entirely, is learning to want less credit for the outcomes you are already responsible for. Level 6 is the quiet level, and it looks almost nothing like power is supposed to look. At this level, influence stops needing to be visible in order to be real. The person here rarely needs to raise their voice, rarely needs to be in the room where a decision is announced. Their influence arrived earlier, in a quiet conversation, a well-placed question, a single piece of advice given weeks before anyone else even saw the problem coming. By the time the room makes its decision, the outcome was already shaped long before the meeting started. This is the level where recognition and influence fully separate from each other. Being seen as the one who did it becomes far less important than the outcome actually happening the way it was intended. This is deeply counterintuitive to anyone who spent years climbing the earlier levels, where visibility was the entire goal. At the invisible level, you fought to be seen at all. At this level, you deliberately choose not to be, because visibility now costs you more than it earns you. Public credit invites scrutiny and jealousy. Quiet influence invites none of that, and keeps working exactly the same either way. The people who reach this level often become difficult to describe to those below them. They do not hold the loudest title in the room. They are sometimes barely mentioned at all in the official account of how something happened. But remove them from the process quietly, and entire outcomes fail to happen the way they were supposed to. This is the truest form of influence, shaping outcomes without needing your name attached to the shaping. It requires letting go of something almost everyone else in every level below has been chasing the entire time: credit. Not because credit does not matter, but because at this level, impact has become more interesting than credit ever was. This shift in priority is what makes level 6 so rare. It is not a skill problem, it is an identity problem. Most people cannot separate their sense of worth from being seen to matter. The person at level 6 has already solved that separation privately, long before anyone else noticed they had climbed this high. And that is the final quiet truth about influence. The highest level of it does not look like power at all. It looks like someone who barely seems to be trying, standing in a room that somehow keeps working better whenever they are in it. Sing visible, liked, useful, trusted, necessary, quiet. Most people spend their whole lives moving between the first three, mistaking comfort at each one for progress. The climb does not require luck, and it does not require charisma in the way most people assume. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable at every single stage, right before the next one opens. So ask yourself honestly, not the version of yourself you perform online, not the story you tell at dinner, the real one. Which level are you actually standing on right now? And more importantly, what has been keeping you there? Because the room is not waiting for you to become louder. It is waiting for you to become necessary, and eventually quiet enough that you no longer need it to notice at all.